Good morning. I now call the May 7th, 2020 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 o'clock a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I will now ask the School Board Attorney to explain the rules of this board meeting.
This work session is a public meeting as defined by Florida Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meeting and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call the speaker's name in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last name. Speakers have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout the meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you.
We'll now begin the work session with the Superintendent's Administrative Briefing.
Thank you. We have some updates for the board. We're going to start with a story that was on WFTV News last night that I just happened to see as it was playing in the background at the house. And it's about some confusion with our bus drivers and how they can take advantage of the FMLA that we're offering, that we briefed you all yesterday. So I spoke with Mr. Leppert last night, who spoke with Ms. Rora. I also spoke with Diane Weingard, the president of IUPAT, and Ms. Rora and Ms. Weingard are both here to clarify what is happening there. So Ms. Rora.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Superintendent, Mayor, Board Chair, Board members, Attorney Green, and Ms. Presbitino. So I'm here to address some of the information that went out on last night news in regards to the miscommunicated information. So on Friday evening, past Friday, I had a number of webinars with my management team to bring them up to speed on us bringing employees back to work, and also reaching out to the bus drivers and the bus aides in their areas to ensure that they all knew that the expectation is for them to return to work, and for those who felt that they could not, what their options were. In doing that, through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we were doing one-on-one phone calls. We learned Saturday that some of the information that was provided was not 100% accurate. So my management team contacted me to get clarification, and once it was clarified, we immediately reached back out to every individual that had gotten that information, and it was in one zone, and we clarified all that by Sunday before they came to work. Now, currently, the bus drivers and the bus aides, they are still a little confused. It's a lot of information. It's decisions that have to be made about their own personal health and the care for their family, and we are trying as hard as we can to disseminate all the information as accurate as possible to help them to make the decision that's best for them and their family. We can't tell them yay or nay or whether or not you qualify. We push that information to equity, and equity is to vet that. And that is some of the frustration, is that Frontline can't give them the yay or nay, and that's not for us to vet. And that's what I've shared. Let me submit your information to equity. When they speak with you, that's where you will get the additional information, and they will let you know what documentation is needed to ensure that you qualify under one of the reasons that's presented there.
And thank you, Ms. Rohr. You know that I came out to you all Monday. I think that was Monday. And then on yesterday, I was out at Zone 4 because there was some confusion concerning what we all talked about last Thursday.
Well, I'm confused too, so.
And it's very confusing, but I was able to get JC on yesterday on my cell phone, and she was able to kind of talk to them and explain it, and they were much appreciative, and I'll be going out to Zone 3?
Yes, sir.
3 today to try to help navigate it. And the thing is, it was a lot of information, given a lot real fast, and but you guys are doing a good job on trying to correct the error. And sometimes the news media gets it a little bit wrong.
The information is so different than we've ever heard in this whole country, so
Right.
it's like totally changing your brain. You know, it's hard to get your head wrapped around. Some of it just doesn't make any sense. It's sometimes hard to get your head wrapped around something that makes no sense.
Yes, and it's important for us to continue to communicate with our employees. And many of my employees don't have access to internet, or they can't get into their email. With them coming back, I've had an influx of those finishing the navigating online presentation and the cyber. So aside from doing some of their bus cleaning, some of them are pushed out to schools. We're up to 54 now that are pushed out to the schools. I've been getting kudos from a couple of schools. They're very appreciative of the employees that are assisting with test books, assisting with bagging up things out of the locker and label them so parents can come pick them up. So it's various jobs out there, and many of them are appreciative, and I'm getting kudos pushed out, and I've pushed them out so they let the employees know that they are appreciated from the principals, PE teachers, and other staff members on campus that they've been working with. They're happy
So
to
you only
have
have
them.
50 out of how many?
I have 54 that's pushed out. We have a total of 190 that are on site working. So out of that, 54 thus far have been pushed out. And as schools see the needs, if they want more, we can definitely provide more.
And that's great, letting the school let you know what they need.
Absolutely.
'Cause some schools may need 0, some may need 4, you know?
That's correct.
I have a question about the buses. Are they ran like every so often? You know, because when a vehicle sits too long, that's when things fall apart or break. Are we do they
Cranking 'em?
crank them up and drive them around and?
They may not drive them a long distance, but Chico is managing that with he and his staff. We assist if he needs our help in assisting, but all of the buses from the outlying remote area have been brought into the main transportation area, so those were in driving, but they still continue the maintenance as well. We're still complying with the 30-day maintenance on those buses, so yes, he's caring for them and make sure they stay in shape.
Okay, I was just kind of curious.
Yes, ma'am.
And there are a lot of those folk that are out there. And so I thank them for what they've been doing this week. It has been a change. It's a change from what they were used to doing, and there were concerns about what are they going to be doing and exactly what things. But they have been doing a tremendous job, and we appreciate them for coming in and doing that. But the biggest thing was to let them know that they do have options. And it's up to them. We can't tell them what option to choose. They have to choose what's the option that's best for them and their family and their needs. So,
Absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest part of this piece, communicating that to them, that they have
Absolutely.
options.
Yes, I'm proud of my staff, and I'm here to take care of them, so I don't want to give them any misleading. And when we err, we go back and correct it. I'm very proud of my staff.
Can you just send us an email letting us know, or I want to know, how many of your staff, they're on FMLA for the 2 weeks, and how many are actually?
Working or not. Yes, ma'am,
would
I'll
just be
compile that, and Ms. Ms. Gary's office is still in the process of vetting that, and so, yes, as soon as I can get that for you, Ms. Stacy, I will.
And then talking to Ms. Gary and Ms. Oliver yesterday, there's been an influx. So they've been trying to have a quick turnaround with processing that paperwork. I think the government gives them about 72 hours to do it, and they've been trying to do it within like a day and a half. So they're really bombarded over there with all these paperwork coming in, but they're doing an excellent job. So thank you, Ms. Rohr.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Weingard.
Ms. Weingard. Good morning.
What?
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for allowing me to come in and speak. My address is 12250 Northeast 139th Place, Fort McCoy. There's been a lot of fear, this COVID-19. People are just scared. And, you know, when you watch the news, some of the stuff that you see is very scary. And a lot of our bus drivers and aides, and even some food service workers, are, you know, they're middle-aged or 65 or older. and they were told to come back to work. There really wasn't any warning. We had to get them out there, and it caused a lot of confusion, especially with the Family Medical Leave Act. I call it Family Medical Leave Act COVID-19. And some of them were very concerned about their health in catching this. I've been working with Dr. Grantham very well, trying to do the best. I'm just glad that our people are working, getting an income, because there's a lot of people out there in America that are getting nothing, not even their unemployment. And if there's any questions you want to ask me, please do. I've just been working hard.
I think it was the goal of the board when all of this started, that we wanted to make sure that we took care of our people. And we knew that there were certain jobs that they couldn't do from home, but we did what we could for as long as we could, and it's just.
Yes, bus drivers, there's not much they can do. I'm glad they did find something for them to do. I've been working hard with Becky. I've been working hard with Dr. Grantham, and not everything is perfect. You know, getting the mask, getting the gloves, they are getting to them. You know, making them understand the Family Medical Leave Act, COVID-19 is confusing. And it just was so quick, them coming back without really no warning. And I think that caused a lot of
Correct.
questions.
And they have about 18 more days, is about 18 days left
Left of their school year?
of the school year for them,
Yeah.
of actual work days, so.
Yeah, trying to find things for bus drivers and aides to do, in my personal opinion, I think it's going to run out. And it's last couple weeks or last week, so I don't know what you're going to have them to do. You need to think about that.
And what is your position, ma'am? I'm
I
sorry.
am a representative from
IUPAT.
IUPAT.
Okay.
I was a Marion County school bus driver for almost 31
I
years.
just didn't know what your.
I was a bus
why you
driver.
were speaking to.
I was one of them, and I was chairperson for most of that time for the union.
Okay.
So I've been doing this a long time. I have studied the Medical Leave Act for COVID-19 quite
It's-
thoroughly. It is very confusing. There's a lot of things that, one of them 65 and older, lot lung disease, liver, even obesity.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why these people are afraid. They know they have these underlying conditions.
And one thing, I'll share this. One thing that came out yesterday is, and they may not know this, but JC and I were kind of discussing it yesterday. One of the requirements is that if they need to get to the doctor, and the doctor can't get to them as fast as they need to get that diagnosis, one benefit that all of our employees have is the TeleDoc, and right now it's free. So if they need to, they can utilize TeleDoc, and TeleDoc can help them get the documentation that they need.
Some of our people, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of our people are not as computer savvy, and they do have issues even trying to get on Skyward to get their paycheck. And I think there needs to be more training in that, but yes, I do understand what you're saying about that. And a lot of them do use that. I have talked to myself to these people. I mean, it's been a constant last 5 days of being up and trying to get everybody calmed down in the panic,
You're right.
you know, and so I just, you know, want my people to come to work and be paid and be safe. That's number one, be safe.
And that's number one with us.
For us as well.
Reverend Cummins, could I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
As me, this one board member, I would just like to give staff complete flexibility. If there's just nothing for them to do what you need to do, Heidi. Because I don't see any sense in sending someone to a school, and that group's been huddling together, and we now have a new huddle coming in. It's just not necessary if it serves no purpose except to make a check on a form or something. So I would like the board to consider allowing Dr. Grantham and them just to do what they need to do. If it means they just can't go to a school site, I don't see any sense in someone just going to a school site and sitting there and just everybody be sharing cooties and everything.
There's
I don't-
only
I
so
don't see
much
any
they can
purpose
do,
in-
so much they can do cleaning their bus. These buses have been cleaner than they ever been. And it's gonna get to the point to where,
We can't just invent work. I mean, it's, to invent work makes work on the principal, makes work on Ms. Rohrer. There comes a point in time where someone's gonna have to start using some common sense and just do what we need to do as a district, with the ultimate goal in mind, just to protect one another from outside, cooties outside our huddles. I mean, we've all got our huddles that we're with, and I don't think it's right, just because they have to come to work, that we gotta send them to a school and bring another huddle in. Just, I want staff, how do y'all feel about that? Just letting them do what they need to do. If there's no work at the school, I see no sense in a bus driver going down there and sitting. Do y'all?
Well, Ms. Rohrer has said that she's checked with principals, and when there is work,
But she's
they're
saying it's
asking
running out.
for them.
She's the
Well,
union lady, and she says it's gonna run out before 18 days. I've talked to principals, it's gonna run out before 18 days. And there's no sense in us just being,
I've made several suggestions, and we have talked about this, is about, rotating certain groups, maybe come in for the hours that you need to work, and then, just like what some of the others have been doing, what we did in the beginning.
Well, I thought, from my understanding, they're coming in and they're working their route hours. Am I correct, Ms. Rohrer?
Portables.
So whatever their route hours are, that's to make sure that because they're hourly employees, they're making sure they're getting the hours in. The only thing, and I hear what you're saying, Ms. Stacy, the only thing that we could possibly do, I think.
just let them sit there. It's transportation.
That's not what
Don't
I'm,
leave them to a
that's not
school
what I was
to
gonna
sit.
say. What I was gonna say is, at some point, and I don't know, Ms. Rohrer, I don't know, Ms. Weingard, are they gonna run out of stuff to do?
Eventually they will.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, within-
So I can't predict that right now. We have to continue working as we are. As we push them out to the schools, the vast majority of school only have 4 of my people on their campus. Some of them only have 1 or 2. And the one that has the most is 8, and that's at Liberty, but she has them working in pairs of 2s. So they're not all in one place doing, so when the specific duties or work that they create runs out, then I think, or as it began to slow down, that's when we probably need to address it.
Let me ask this question.
But I can't answer that it will.
What kind of duties are they doing at the schools?
So-
I know clean out, packing the stuff out of the lock.
The vast majority are working with textbooks, especially at the high schools. They have them working in the media center, working with textbooks. At Westport High, aside from doing that, they actually assisted the PE teacher, and they were doing assignments with the uniforms, PE uniforms, and getting them sorted. And I knew that because she gave me kudos. The 2 staff members that we sent over said they had great positive attitude. They were able to complete the tasks that they had very quickly and move on to something else. So those are the various things so far. And what was really unique is Hillcrest, and we had to make sure we found the unique person to work there. Hillcrest is doing gardening and working in their greenhouse. So we didn't dictate, you're going here, you're going there. We asked, here's the work that's supplied, and do you want to go there? So we found someone that was elated about going to assist at Hillcrest and work in the garden. And she even asked, well, since I'll be out in the greenhouse and gardening, can I come out of my uniform and wear appropriate clothing for that task? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You get comfortable, you wear the clothing you need. So Ms. Manresa is very pleased with that. And there was one other one that does gardening, I believe it was mows a sunrise. So there's various tasks. And they know, if we know the task in advance, we're sharing it with employees.
So we've offered some flexibility with those that's going out to the schools. The other thing is, I guess, Dr. Mayor, as some of this, and I do anticipate that some of the stuff is going to wind down. I don't know a timetable. I'm thinking that this may wind down by the end of next week, some of the tasks in the schools that they may have.
Some of the schools did not request, I'm sorry.
That's because I know some schools didn't request any.
And then we have some that did not even request it up until the 11th or until the 18th. So their tasks that they have that they need assistance with don't start until those dates. So I do have that information on a spreadsheet that I can share if you'd like.
What about professional development?
Earlier in the beginning of this work mode, we did assist, but we assist with early learning, with the learning team. Professional development has not reached out, but my team, those who have not finished the cyber or some of the others, they have been working on them, and they're shooting me their completion status. But I can look on there and see if there's anything else like we can get for them.
On that.
But even with that, you don't have enough computer terminals and resources at those.
You can have rotation.
those-
They've been rotating.
You can have rotations. And another thing that comes to my mind is when school was in session, it seemed like very often, sometimes daily, weekly, whatever, accidents. We would get those things. So what about practicing, using that time to practice with the buses and maneuvering in and out and close, that could be something that they could focus on, that skill that could help us later, if that makes sense. So, because we did see a lot of, bumps and things like that. So maybe they could actually use the bus, practice, make courses up, something so that they're working on their skill, and it's true work, and it makes us better when school starts back next
Absolutely,
fall.
I'll look into that, Ms.
That's just an idea.
Good idea.
And I have a couple of webinars coming up. I've been trying to keep track with DOE, with our FAPT, which is our Florida Association Pupil Transportation, what do I want to say? Organization. And so they have webinars coming up next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, and we're all directors are trying to, talk about, share information. What does it look like? What are you doing with your folks? What can we do? And what will it look like if we were to go back in August? How many can we put on a bus? What's appropriate, what's not appropriate? So I'm participating in all the different webinars that I can to get ideas, see what other districts are doing. And so I'm hoping to get some more information in regard to what we can use. And I'm also seeking guidance on when we can start back training. When can I put the trainer and the one trainee on a bus and just the two of them and work through some things, work through some of the retraining. That's what I'm getting clarification on. Because yes, and because they have to be kind of in close proximity to give instructions.
6 feet.
And to ensure that the maneuvers are done good. So if we expand that, it'll be a little bit of yelling to get the information to them, but I want to make
Buses are
sure.
pretty wide if they're sitting in the front seat to the right and the driver's over here. I would think that's close to 6 foot, isn't it?
It's a few seats back. We kind of measured all that out
From the, over to the
from the
side?
driver. Yes, ma'am.
Even on the other side?
About 3 rows back
Okay.
to get the 6 feet. And so those are some of the things that I've been talking to with DOE and with our different organizations to ensure that we are in compliance and keeping everybody safe.
Well,
Let me
that
ask a question.
would be good.
From crisis comes creativity, and I love that idea about having drivers have a chance to practice when that can be a possibility. And then I also heard you say, I think, about Skyward, and that we have drivers and aides that still could use some professional development on that. I would think that that could be something that would be very worthwhile and timely. And my other question is that because there is a backlog, a lot of people applying at once for the COVID FMLA, do they have enough help in the back office to be processing?
I asked that yesterday. I asked that yesterday. She said that they do have enough, and the training that would be required to put someone in there.
More time.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then my last thought is that a lot of times when you get to a school, that's when you begin to notice some things that you could be helpful with. So it's always important to make sure that our employees know that we're open to their ideas too about ways that they can be helpful and what they're noticing. And I'm sure that's happening, but it is important because we don't want to invent work for people, but there are so many possibilities that are being created by this crisis. And I just think it's important to be very open to what everyone is saying and how they feel they can contribute best and the most safely.
And like the Skyward training, that's a real good idea too. Just to help.
And they're always clamoring for behavior management, professional development, so that could be another thing.
I will reach out and definitely look into that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weingart.
Anyone can do it, Ms. Ward can. She's
Yeah.
on top of it.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning. Reverend Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Thrower, board members. All right, so I'm here to briefly talk to you about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. As we have spoken before, it is an act that provides our employees with provisions that are confusing. That's the main thing I'm hearing, is that people are confused. And honestly, if they weren't confused, I would be surprised. My team and I, and my team is amazing, my team and I have had so many discussions about the ramifications and the provisions offered to employees through this act. We have had discussions together with an attorney, we have watched webinars, we have had a lot of information come down the pike, of course, from DOL. We've read articles, we have read the information. It is confusing, but here's the good thing. We have a dedicated team. And Dewana Gary and Tyson Collins are heading that up as we speak. They are taking hundreds of cases, hundreds a day. They are meeting the requirement. They are right there with getting back with employees. And I know there's been misinformation. Honestly, that doesn't surprise me because it is so difficult. But the good thing is that Dewana is working with every individual who calls. People don't have to already know their reason, but it's very helpful if they do. And sometimes it's obvious. I need to stay home with my children. It's number 5. Sometimes people have 2 reasons. And so what our employees need to know is the biggest thing they can do to help themselves is to tell their administrator and their secretary that they want to take advantage of our emergency sick leave and or our expanded FMLA due to a COVID reason. They need to share what that reason is with the secretary if they know it, and the secretary will contact our department with that information, which they're doing, and relay it to Dewana. Dewana sends out a packet immediately, and then we have conversations with each employee. We help them come to a final decision about which reason they're applying for, and we walk them through what they need to do. They have time to get the doctor's paperwork back. I have had multiple conversations with coordinators out there, with groups of bus drivers, with Reverend Cummings to try to help with the miscommunication. And I think people are getting it, and they seem relieved when they understand. So people don't need to expect their secretary or their administrator to know these details. They really aren't supposed to. Really, just send your information to us via your secretary. We will contact employees and explain it to them to where they're like, oh, well, oh. Why didn't someone just say so? Well, you know why? Because they haven't had conversations with attorneys. They haven't watched webinars. They don't have the information. It's not their total job. We've been immersed in this. It's our job. And we're on it. My team is amazing. So if you hear of anything that we need to do to correct, I know Reverend Cummings has been connecting me with certain people, do not hesitate to call me. And we are making a difference, and we're getting people the provisions they need. That's the most important thing. And as soon as we do make those connections, people are immediately relaxing. And if you're still confused out there, employees, take a deep breath. That is okay, because we will have conversations and you will feel much better after that. So I can certainly go through the provisions quickly, but probably, yeah, I don't think we really need to. We're there, we're manning the phones, and a big shout out to my team again. Thank you guys, they're amazing, so.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. You were
Absolutely.
so on the ready yesterday. I didn't know if I needed my track shoes or what yesterday, but she really pulled it out, helped us out. And I'll be calling you shortly because I'm going to go into another zone. And I think, and the biggest thing, when people don't, when there's questions and they can't get the answers as fast as they need to, it causes more chaos, and
It does.
we're working it out.
It does, and I just encourage people to take a deep breath, and they will not be without the provisions they need. They will not. And so, hopefully that will cause a little bit of ease. We don't need to be frustrated and confused at this time. We will work it out.
And for those employees that need a medical diagnosis, I want to again emphasize the Teledoc option. And if they are going into a workplace that has internet and someone that can help them get through the Teledoc process, that can be a very quick way for them to get what they need. And it's important for everyone to remember right now that they are not alone in this, and that there is someone, usually many, that are willing to help them through the process. So
That is a wonderful point.
And Teledoc's free right now.
It is free.
Teledoc is free right now.
That's right. We discussed that with our small group yesterday. Thank you for bringing that up again. And I know that some of our bus drivers and aides and maybe food service workers, certain groups of our employees don't have access to a computer as easily as other groups. And so along the lines of the Teledoc, that's a wonderful suggestion. Go to your school site or your department site to get that done through a computer and internet. And the same advice goes for printing off their FMLA forms when they come to them. Go to your school or that you're assigned to or your department, and the secretary there can certainly help you access your email with a computer on site, and you can print those documents off. So people, there is help, definitely. Don't stress.
And Teledoc has an app that you can put right on your smartphone, and I've used it several times, and it is very user-friendly. Very, very user-friendly.
Well, very good,
Yep.
very good.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and all your help. Take care.
I'll be calling you.
So yesterday I sent you an email, forwarded an email from the chancellor regarding the school calendar, and the commissioner has waived the instructional time for those 5 days, the extended spring break. Because the calendar is on the consent agenda this Tuesday, I thought it was very important that Mr. Ayers come today to give you a couple options on what that looks like now that we know for sure those days are waived.
Good morning, Pastor Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor, Ms. Green, Ms. Prespatino. I'm here today to go over again the memo that we received yesterday from the Chancellor that forgave the 5 days for the extended spring break. Understanding that we've already adjusted our calendar to account for missing days and days of instruction because we necessarily couldn't wait on the state. We had to go forward for the sake of our kids, our teachers, working plan to have a plan going forward. We accounted for all the instructional hours. And understand with the FEFP, there's a 180-day or 900-hour instructional hour minimum that you have to meet. There's nothing that says that you can't go over. And we routinely, every year, go over the hour requirement just because of the way we operate. What I wanted to do was, the memo now makes the 1920 school year is now 175 days or 875 instructional hours. Instructional days and hours have nothing to do with teacher days. Those are by contract. So no matter what we do or what we've done, 196 days are teacher days. That stays the same. The options, and the recommended option is option 1. We maintain the calendar adjustment that we've done. It's on the consent agenda. We've talked about it. We had consensus the last time we met, and we basically publicized that. We've let teachers know. We've let everybody know. Option 2 would be to have instruction end on May 29th, the Friday, which would make it 175 instructional days. But doing that, we'd have to amend the calendar going forward. And so we wanted you to know as the board to know, but our recommendation is to maintain the current calendar adjustment.
Just stay where we are.
And the time for students,
To turn in assignments?
the turn in assignments and stuff like that.
We are.
Yeah, I mean, it's really only one more day.
One day.
More instructional day. When you look at it, the 29th is a Friday and June 1st is a Monday.
And the information's already out there on it, and
Yeah, to change it again is just more confusion.
Yeah,
and-
they've got enough confusion going on as it is.
Right.
yes.
I agree.
And more time to turn in assignments.
Yeah, that's the big
That's what
thing.
we thought
They get,
yesterday.
when we talked about it yesterday,
Yep.
if we maintain it, we're cutting a day for them to turn in work and get assignments done. So,
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping it.
Yes, Ms. King.
okay.
okay? All right, thank you very much.
That's
See you
it.
in a minute. All right.
We've got an update on grades for you.
Good morning, everyone. Very generically, we're pulling data from what our students have done last year compared to this year. We are noticing a decline in grades from fourth quarter this year compared to last year, and we understand that. So we're working on something to bring to you, but because of the timeliness of it and still having 3 weeks of instruction left, we want to bring that back to you. But we are going to bring data and support what we will recommend, but we're just not in a place to do that. But we are noticing decline in what's going on with students' academic performance.
I think, Dr. Grantham, I think for you to hold off on saying anything right now could,
Well, remember the graduation conversation is
Right.
very similar to that. So we want to continue instruction and continue learning until we make a decision about
right.
what we're going to do for
'Cause
grades.
we don't want to say something and then everybody just stop because they think they don't,
Yes, sir.
that the third quarter is going to cover them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we want them to, yeah, keep working.
Yes,
Keep
ma'am.
working.
And we'll bring you actual facts and data to support what we recommend.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
We have a graduation update. This will be the last update, administrative briefing.
Okay.
Mr. McAteer is zooming in.
All righty.
Just a minute to start.
Do you need to come back here? Are you sure? Okay.
Mr. Christian, I need you to start the meeting.
That's what I'm working on.
This technology is amazing.
Wasn't that interesting?
I have that happen all the time. When I do stuff.
I kind of like being upside down.
That's our world right now, we're upside down.
Upside down,
Mr.
Good morning.
Mr. McAteer, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Board
yeah. All right, go ahead, Mr. McAteer, we're here.
Good morning. Wanted to make sure that before we get started, that we kind of review where we've been over the last two Thursdays that we've spoke about graduation. I'm going to go through it very quickly and briefly, but I want to make sure that we kind of review some things. 2 weeks ago, I came to you and said that we had had lots of conversation with stakeholders, that we were doing, that the overwhelming majority wanted to look at in-person graduations. We talked about using stadiums, doing scaled back graduations with 2 tickets per senior, hopefully live streamed so folks could watch them at home. Students and parents seating using social distancing, removing other sections such as bands, choruses, teacher sections, except for senior teachers to work with the seniors. Stage seating would be reduced, have a strong law enforcement presence, and we wanted to go in and out. So that was kind of the very quick version. Last week we discussed dates and the fact that either type of graduation is going to be painful, so we wanted to make sure that we were balancing public health as well as making sure that we looked at what our seniors needed and deserved. So, and we also talked about it being equitable. And I told you that I would go back and do 2 things. We would look at dates, and then we would also, I would look at some backups with some community stakeholders. So I think you should have in your hand a handout that you just received possibly. And it's the same handout I gave you last week, but it's got our recommendations at the bottom based on what we've done in the past week. So we are recommending, and again, we're here to get the consensus from the board, so this is just our recommendation, option 2. Option 2 would have the graduations between June 12th and June 22nd at stadiums. That's our ideal, okay? The reasons for this, among many, are more setup time, so we can move stages, chairs. During the last part of May and first part of June, we will be collecting lots of Chromebooks, lots of textbooks, lots of other different things that our folks will be tied up doing. And again, with the extra sanitizing and cleaning and things that we have to do, that isn't the seamless process that it has been in the past. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put much pressure on the schools there. Also, one of the things, and again, I'm being optimistic here, but we could possibly be in phase 2, and we might be able to relax some of the seating requirements that we have that are so stringent right now. Obviously, there's no guarantees, and I've said every time I spoke to you, this is a fluid situation. But that certainly would be a positive thing if we could do that. The third thing is I've had some stakeholders reach out to me and say that and I know this from being at a high school as an AP and as a principal, that usually college orientations are the first week of June. So I did have a couple of parents reach out to me and remind me that UCF and there was one other state school that their orientation was the first week of June, and I'm not sure if they're virtual or in person. I'm guessing that they're going to try to do some sort of in person where they can, but they were very adamant that those things were something they didn't want their child to miss with everything else. And again, no matter what we do here, it's not going to be a perfect situation, but I wanted to point that out to you. So if you look at the recommendations at the bottom, if we're not able to do that, we'd like to wait until July. That's what our seniors have told us. They would rather wait in July for an in-person graduation than they would go to a virtual type graduation in May or June. So we're listening, and again, that's kind of what we've been hearing from several folks from our high school principals. They've reached out again to their stakeholders as they've had more and more people come in and pick up their cap and gowns. Obviously, they've gotten even more feedback than they had before. So it's very, very clear that our folks want in-person graduations if possible. So if not able to be due to the restrictions, we would go to July. Now, one thing that I did tell you that I was going to do last time that I have done is research a backup plan in case we couldn't do them at stadiums with all the parents in person. So what I've done is I spoke to several local churches. I'd like to thank them for reaching out to me. Obviously, the drive-in has offered their services, and I also visited the Paddock Mall the other day, and Ashley Wheeler-Gurge was a big help in showing me a lot of different things, and they have those types of church services actually in their parking lot, and they have a tremendous amount of parking. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what that would look like if we had to go to option or recommendation 3, which is our worst case scenario, and still having students together in person. I'm just going to give you a numerical example because it's easy. Forest High School at a graduation would have, in our stadium, would have approximately 1,500 people spread out throughout the stadium. I mean, they'd be spread out all over the place because we'd have the students on the field spread out. We would have a few administrators, not very many, a few teachers, but then pretty much we would have the parents or the two guests in the stand socially distanced with X's as we talked about at our first meeting. If we did it at another place where we would have to go indoors, we would only be able to do 500, which would be the students, and we would still have to socially distance them. So what does that look like? Well, I know you guys have gotten emails because I've gotten them too, and I know you're very involved in your community, so I know you know kind of what's going on with the drive-up churches. And it's a very interesting idea, and a lot of people are doing it a lot of different ways and very well. But what we looked at after looking at several different options, the first thing we looked at was parking, because each student, probably just like 2 tickets, would only be able to bring 1 car, or a carload, so to speak. And obviously some people have larger cars than others, so I'm sure large cars would be at a premium if we went to this. So we had to look at parking spots. And, ideally we need 600 to 700 parking spots at least. But we also need a place where we can spread the students out indoors to be able to do social distancing so they can walk across the stage. So after looking at several different places, First Baptist Church of Ocala and Pastor Gaddis, they have the best option, I believe, for the district in terms because of the very large sanctuary that they have. I mean, we could easily, I believe they have 189 rows or pew rows or sections of pews, I believe was the number, and I don't think that included the balcony, it might have, but they have a tremendous, amount of space indoors that any other place that we looked didn't have. Keep in mind that in this worst case scenario, we wouldn't have parents in there. So it would just be students, and we would easily be able to spread the students out. I've walked the whole thing with their team, and they just, they're not even using their sanctuary right now. They have a stage outside, but that wouldn't be practical for us because we wouldn't have room to be able to put the students and socially distance them, which is why we want to use our football field as a best case scenario because that does give us that option. So what it would look like is if we went to this backup option, or second backup, I guess you'd say, is that we would use their large sanctuary to spread students out. We would use the senior teachers, again, as marshals because those senior teachers are the ones that the students know, they're the ones that they trust, and they're the ones that they'll listen to. But again, it's not as big of a problem at First Baptist because it really is spread out. I mean, it's a very, I know you've all been in there. They can park 700 to 800 people. And again, I'm looking for a minimum of 6 to 650. We would have to get a sound system, but they also have an FM translator that they own. So they actually have an FM translator that the station could play if somebody didn't have FM. We would also make sure that we put a sound system out there. We would have to get multiple screens. Currently, they use 2 screens. They have 4 on big services such as Easter. We would have to probably rent from each school's budget, which we have a graduation budget anyway, that they put in, that they raise something to get more screens. Because we need as many screens as we possibly could. Ms. Gerds at the mall has been a very big help in giving me some leads on people that would give us those screens at a very, very low price. So we're excited about that. So the families wouldn't be inside, but students would still experience an in-person graduation, which is what they want. I know Dr. Mayer has been working with law enforcement and the health department on our plans. And again, it's fluid. It's going to change, and the things that we're going to be asked to do are going to change daily based on what's happening in the community. But what we're looking for today is just consensus on the dates so that we can move forward and start advertising to parents.
So, Mr. McAteer, can I ask a question? If we had to use First Baptist, would the students walk across the stage inside the sanctuary and that be televised to the outside? Is that the plan?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. That is the plan. Yes, they've got such. We would not bring them outside.
Okay.
They would be able to. Obviously, it's a huge roof ceiling, and we would make sure that the doors were open on all sides. But they would be very much apart from each other, and it would be much easier to manage than any of the other venues that we looked at indoors because there is no excuse for people to be close together. And even Westport, our largest school, we feel comfortable that we could do that. But yes. That's the painful part of it. That would be sacrificing the in-person. Again, that goes back to the ratio. 1,500 in a stadium, which is safer outside, as opposed to 500 indoors with a large ceiling with lots of, and if you look across the state, lots of folks are trying to do a lot of different things. Some folks are trying to do indoors still, and some with social distancing, and some folks have gone to the stadium route. So yes, to answer your question, Ms. McCall, yes.
Actually, if the parents are outside and we have enough screens, they'll have a better vantage point of their student than even at the Southeastern Livestock, because that's a huge facility. So I think that's a great alternative plan. So I thank First Baptist for offering that.
Again, I can't say enough to, Mr. Worski at the drive-in and the other pastors from other churches who have stepped up, and especially Ashley Wheeler-Gerds and Katie Honeycutt at the Paddock Mall. I mean, we had a plan for every place that we went. It's just the sanctuary at First Baptist, and we walked the parking, and they use the baseball field in the back. They don't even use half the parking for their normal church services that they would open up for us. And they also have an option where we can actually just have students drive their cars and park. Because what some districts are doing with drive up, one in Florida in particular, our drive up graduations, is they're making the student the ticket. The student has to ride with the parent to come into a drive up graduation, and obviously that takes the space away from somebody in the car that would want to sit and watch the graduation. So we've actually got enough on the, I believe it is, let me think, on the west side there, that we could actually have a door where students just enter there, and we get them seated with the marshals spread apart from each other, and they would not even have to be in the general public for that. So that's our backup plan. Again, it will take a lot of work, and again, our desire is to give our students what they want.
Exactly.
So, I mean, obviously,
It's
the
a very
stadium
good backup plan.
idea is what we'd like to do, but, I mean, again, I think it's a viable backup.
It's a great backup.
I'd like to
Thank you.
say something. We've just been into this not even 2 full months. We don't know, that is 2 months out. We don't even know what. They may be back to life as almost normal in 2 months. We don't know. They've got some treatment options for the disease, and we don't even know what. So I would say it's probably still kind of floating about what we'll do as far as, I mean, there might be a point where we could go back to Southeastern. By July, that's 2 months away. We don't even know what we're going to be doing. And then, but I mean, this is a great option for right now. But I honestly, if I was a parent, I'd rather do the First Baptist Church option and be able to bring more family members than to do the 2-person option at the high school, because at least the whole family could go. But, I mean, I'm for whatever anybody wants to do. I'm fine, but we didn't, 6 weeks ago, we didn't even know any of this was even going to happen. It's in 2 months, there's no telling what. This whole thing may be blown over a lot by then.
So I like your option 2, at the dates at the stadiums, and I think those are great dates. And then if we have to move to the other options, I think I can absolutely agree with that.
I like option 2 as well. It gives us time. We know that pretty much every 30 days we get some type of alert or something. So things may be a little bit more relaxed. So I like option 2.
That works.
Well, he recommended option
Okay.
2, so I don't see any reason for us to go against what his
Exactly.
recommendation is, so.
Move forward then, thank you. Again, one point that Ms. Stacy did bring up, which is a very cognizant point, is that this is a fluid situation. So I hope not to be back in front of you talking about graduation again, but the reality is we may be, and we'll come to the board if there are adjustments that need to be made and ask for your advice and consensus. So thank you.
So let me ask a question. As of right now, are we going to go ahead and publish in these dates?
What was your recommendation?
I would say if we've got board consensus, I would say yes, that those dates would become public knowledge, but I think there would have to be a disclaimer and maybe even schedule the backup dates with them, which is what several districts have done.
Okay.
Mr. McAteer, what was your recommendation for dates?
Option 2.
I would go with option 2, which is on the at the bottom, number 1 of the page. I would go with keeping it at our schools if we can. But again, the board seems to be at consensus, so I would go with that.
Option 2, then, the dates that you're recommending are those June dates?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So you have consensus from us. Thank you, Mr. McAteer.
Thank you.
Any comments, guys? All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Mayor.
That concludes the briefing, thank you so much.
All right. We're going to hear from Mr. Dennis McFadden, Metal Detector Safe Schools Director.
Morning, good morning.
Morning.
This morning, we are going to discuss new security screening that the board asked us to look into, where we looked at the option of warning or screening everybody that come into the district office. So you should have packets in front of you. And obviously, the purpose of this is to enhance our security procedures at all school board, work sessions, as well as some other events that may be related to school events or district events. These screenings will include increased security personnel, bag searches, and the use of handheld and/or walk-through metal detectors. Basically, the handheld or walk-through metal detectors are designed to alert you if there's some type of metal that could on the body that could be used for a weapon. So that's the purpose. So the first thing we got, and the most simple thing, is the handheld metal detectors. We do have 2 at every high school, 1 at every middle school, and my office has 2 as well. We purchased these about a year and a half ago, so they already have them, and they know they have been using them at the different locations. They're lightweight, they're mobile, they're less expensive. The only concern we have with them, and that's why we really wanted to make sure we implement a process and a procedure that work for the board, is the closeness of it. Some people feel a little bit uncomfortable being wanded, but basically you walk into the room or the facility, you spread your arms out so that the security person can wand you from the neck out amongst your arms, and as they get to a certain point, they may pick up on jewelry, belts, those type of things, and the alarm will go off. So at that point, you just want to dispel the fact that they don't have a weapon. You can see if somebody has a watch or some type of jewelry on, it's going to set it off.
So
But
how much is the handheld?
they were roughly, they're about $100 and some, but they're already purchased. We already got them.
Curious what the
Yes,
cost
ma'am.
was.
So we've already have them. It's a little slower process, and the other negative to that will be a lot of times when handheld, you kind of want to pick and choose who gets wanded.
Right.
But you just have to be consistent and do everybody because
Makes
that's just the
people
procedure. Exactly.
see it, yeah.
Exactly. So this is the example of a handheld metal detector. Like I said, we've got 2 of them at every high school, 1 at the middle schools, and we have 2 within our department. The next option is the walk-through metal detectors. Lot more, it's quicker, it screens everybody. You put it at the front entrance of a building or a door, everybody walks through, gives no preconceived biases towards people. That's what I like about it. If you come in the building, you go through the metal detector, you walk through it. And it scans the full body at one time. And these metal detectors are so sensitive now, we've been looking into them. They actually tell you what part of the body on the screen where the metal object is at, up around the head, the knee, the waist. It tells you all it by the way it lights up. But all of this requires extra personnel. And one thing I forgot to mention is, our law enforcement personnel, first responders, if they walk through the metal detector, they're going to go off, so they will be exempt from this type of search. So this is an example of a walk-through metal detector, one that's ADA compliant. This one right here is actually, it's got a caster wheels on the bottom of it, so it's mobile. It runs off a battery, you can plug it in, and that's the cost of it. That's the downside to the walk-through metal detectors. The upside to it is if we happen to move to a bigger building or one facility for all district personnel, again, that could be placed there, again, to provide more security for an oversized building. So the new procedures, what we want to start doing, we want to start with the recommendation is to implement a community awareness campaign. In other words, let's start educating the community first on what the procedures would be. We don't want to just start something today and the public come and not being aware of it. So through social media, email, Skyalert, text messages, board meetings, work sessions, just start to let the public know what we're recommending. Again, we want to increase the staff. As you can see, we had the personnel out there this morning, and we also have to train them on the new screening procedures. You just can't put them out there and say, hey, do it. We have to have some type of training, in which we've got Garrett, the metal detector company, has graciously said that they'll either provide us with a PowerPoint presentation or physically come down and train us on the proper use of the metal detectors. Okay, it will require a security screening for everyone entering the building for board meetings, work sessions, and other events as directed by the superintendent. Again, we can use this it'll take a lot more staff at graduations, football games. Again, that's going way outside of the scope of what the board has asked for, okay? But just, all bags will be searched through the screening process. You know, sometimes you have people just bringing in bags, just bringing in big bags of stuff. Do they really need that bag? We don't know what's in it, but we need to start searching and making sure, or we do that now, but there's a process. We want to make sure we search every bag. Some of the prohibited items. As we know, weapons, to include guns, knives, brass knuckles, or any other item that could be deemed a threat to the safety of others, alcohol or other illegal drugs, pepper spray, mace, and any suspicious packages that are not deemed safe by the security personnel. Also, big, large bags. If you go to a UF game or any of these sporting events, they limit the bag size and even tell you your bag has to be clear. So again, it's about educating the public through a campaign of awareness. So some approved items. Certain bags, cases, packages will be allowed after proper screening, such as medically necessary items, props for a presentation. We do have speakers that come in and they need bags and items in their bags to come in and give you a presentation. So obviously we'll let those items in. And any item deemed safe by security personnel. Remember, we do house our employees here. So if they're coming to work, coming in, they have their personal items that they bring in, lunch or whatever, so those items will be allowed to come in as well. So I want to give you some options. The first option is recommended will use only handheld metal detectors for security screenings. It's what we're doing, the security screenings. Increase security personnel at all board meetings, work sessions, and other events designated by the superintendent, and use handheld detectors to conduct random screenings district-wide at sporting events, graduations, etc. That's option one.
Mr. McFadden?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the third bullet when it comes
Okay.
to conducting random screenings without divulging safety information. Would that be done based on a formula that would be consistent?
You're exactly right. So we've reached out to other districts who has metal detectors, and what they do, there's a software program, and this software program would generate a random school, a random building, a random classroom. And that is where you would conduct a search, but we will try to do it where it's non-invasive as far as disturbing the educational process of the students. That's if we go that route. Same thing with sporting events. You can either do every 10th person, every 12th person, every 15th person, but again, you have to be consistent. You can't get to the 10th person and say, number 9 looks suspicious, so I'm going to backtrack and get 9. And you can't do that. It has to be consistent, documented. We'll make sure it's documented that we do every 10th person or every 15th person, whatever we decide for that particular event.
And
Thank you. I was thinking more about sporting events and graduations
Right, yes.
and how that would be randomly implemented.
Yes.
And with that, where I come from, it changed. It was, today it could be every 3,
Yeah.
today it could be everybody. Or the next is every 5 or every, it's based on, I think he's the safe school director, he should have that flexibility.
Right.
But I also wanted to add.
Set for that time.
Right, for that specific event. And then the other thing, Mr. McFadden, on your approved items list, probably need to add prescribed meds, because there's some staff that do
You have
bring the
prescribed
prescribed meds with them.
Add that.
Do what?
And I
Bring
thought
prescribed
about,
meds.
Diabetics.
I thought about what you said, Miss Thor. I remember playing sports, and when those old days of what they call bull in the ring or something, you didn't want to go against the big guy. So you would make yourself, ooh, that's count, and then you would get back and say, I'm not going to get. So we want to make sure that we do consistent 10th person, 12th person, 5th person, 6th person, but that'll be predetermined, but it'll change every time.
Right.
Thank you.
So that was option 1. Option 2 would use a combination of handheld and walk-through metal detectors. Again, we'll have to increase the security staff at all board meetings, work sessions, and other events designated by the superintendent. You would have to purchase the walk-through metal detector to conduct screenings district-wide to include sporting events and graduations. Again, the walk-through is a little bit of faster method. You get more people through, and again, it's not discriminatory. Everybody goes through it. Option 3 is use a combination of handheld and walk-through metal detectors, increase staff to conduct security screenings all day at District West, which is this office of this building and purchase multiple detectors to conduct random screenings district-wide. So we know that we're only doing this for work sessions and board meetings. The board has to decide if that's the limit as to what we're gonna do. Are we gonna try to do this all day, throughout the day? We don't recommend that because, again, the time, we safe schools, we recommend option 2.
Thank you.
Our recommendation is using a combination of handheld and walk-through metal detectors. You only need the one. We spoke to Ms. Boston Ellis, and we spoke to the company, and we feel as though we could purchase that metal detector, increase the security staff at all board meetings and work sessions and other events designated by the superintendent, and we will meet the needs of what the board requested a few weeks back with option 2. If we don't do option 2, option 1 would be the second option that we would recommend. Any questions?
I don't have a question. You're recommending option 2. I'm fine with that after reading and the explanation.
Because that little metal detector, the stand-up one could go right there at that door, couldn't it?
Yeah, well, we talked to, we brought Mike Howell in, we brought Chuck Stiegel in, the experts per se in those fields based on egress and ingress points and code violations, and their best option, what they feel is best, is to be put out front there. That way, when everybody comes in, we check them, but we can post a second person here with the handheld metal detector.
And everybody gets one.
And everybody gets one.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Because then the constituents, when they see, I mean, because that's all we don't need as a parent to say, well, they wanted me, but they didn't want themselves, you know? And I think that we need to be good for the goose, good for the gander, and that old story.
Yeah, and from a security standpoint, then that's what I'm used to. They come through the big one, and then once they get in, because things happen, people can pass stuff, and they get in and they get one, and again, you have layers of security, and I think that's the best.
And what we'll do is prior to board meetings, we'll respond here an hour before, and we will do a walkthrough of the building, checking this room, checking the restrooms, and we will monitor those as folks are coming in to make sure that nothing is
Got
placed.
one way in.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And then the other thing that I liked about this, because I'm familiar with the big both of them, the other one is mobile. The big one is mobile, which could be used around the district for interdictions.
Use around
Not that we're trying to catch anybody, but we are when it comes to drugs and weapons going into our schools. So,
When it comes to bag checks, at the University of Florida, when we go into basketball games, they're actually checking bags outside the door before you get into the metal detector. So I would suggest that we have tables, to check bags before they ever enter the building.
That's what we were planning on doing. We were planning on having a metal detector there, having a table set up
Prior to the metal detector.
asking everybody to open up their bag, we check their bag. If they've got any small items, we're gonna purchase some little plastic bins. They can put cell phones, watches, and those things in that plastic bin, because once they go through the metal detector, it's gonna alert if you got your keys in your pocket and your phone in your pocket. So once they walk through the metal detector, we are hoping that it doesn't alert, because they've taken all metal objects out of their pocket and put in that bin, and we can inspect it then.
and that's kind of like the one they have at City Hall.
Yes.
City Hall, you have to actually walk through, and they shut the door behind you, and you clear in that little room, put everything on the counter, and then you go through so.
And that's great, especially, Ms. McCall, you mentioned basketball games, because gosh, that'd be an awful place to get trapped with a crazy. So that's great that, I would think that would be really
Yes, that's why we.
important to get a gymnasium checked out.
And like I said, with the portable walkthrough, you can take it and just pop it up at a basketball game randomly.
Yeah.
You can't do every game realistically, but just randomly choose through some type of process, different events at different times, different schools.
Well, and having the portable one, it's going to give us the opportunity to look at the data and really, as we begin to purchase more, we'll have some ideas on what works and what doesn't.
Feasibility.
And, yeah,
And you can increase or decrease the
Right.
sensitivity level on this walkthrough, and it keeps count
How many
on how many people comes in.
Yeah.
And you can go back and retrieve all that data just by looking it up on.
One question, I'm through.
Yes, sir.
How soon are we gonna get it?
Well, I reached out to the company. They're ready. I spoke to them as late as yesterday. Once we get your board, Mayor, we go purchase it. They should say it should be here in about 2 weeks. So it only takes a matter of an hour to set it up. You know, it's just a matter of purchasing it and getting it delivered here.
I say go ahead and get it.
Well, it has to come, we
gotta
can't
go
vote on
through-
it today.
I know, we gotta go vote through it, but start working on, I guess, y'all policy or whatever you gotta do.
It'd be procedure.
Procedure.
After you all approve it.
Right,
Then the
right.
procedure comes, yeah.
All right.
You buy it.
The public education piece is going to be important to this
Yeah.
too, so that the community understands that it's going to expedite things if they don't come with big bags full of, big purses and kind of like going to an airport. We all dress down for the most part going to an airport anymore because, right.
Is this on
So we can get
is this on the next agenda for purchase or what? For, when does it come up?
Because we couldn't move forward until we presented the options.
So it'll be on the
May
May
26th.
26th? Okay.
Can we develop the procedures now minus the security, the walkthrough? We can have those procedures developed now to have the wand and everything. That could begin even as early as next Tuesday, correct? Like the procedures, I mean, that's not policy. That can be developed.
Working on a stack of them, yep.
Okay, so if we can work on that procedure sooner than later, I think that would be wise. And then, we can always revisit that later with the walkthrough or whatever.
We'll get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden. Thank you, Dr.
Before you go, what's the update on school fences? How are we looking?
So as you know, when we get the funding through the grant process, we determine how much money goes towards fencing and other security projects. So this COVID kind of slowed things down a little bit, but once we get picked back up, any schools that were scheduled to be fenced in, we got all the high schools done. We started to work on the middle schools, so those schools should be done by, we always set it out to about October. But once they get going on them and start working, when they come in, Mike Howell, Robert Knight and his crew with the companies, they get in and they get them done usually in about, per school, 2 to 3 weeks. So we should be completed with all of the 4 schools we got slated for this year should be done by October.
I was over near, College Park. Theirs is about up.
Yep, so I mean, they're, once they get going on, they get, East Marion is a little bit different when we do work for them because it has to be done during the summer when nobody's there, just based on how the school is built.
Right.
So we have to wait for the summer before we do anything at East Marion.
How many yet do we have to do?
After we do this round of 4, we'll still have about 10 to 12 schools left to be fenced in.
That's pretty good, though.
It's pretty good compared,
Fast.
at one point, we were doing 1 per year, but we picked it up and we're starting to do 4 or 5 a year now. So we're getting there.
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all.
Mr. Stephen Ayers, review of final charter renewal contract.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, any public comment? Come on, Mr. Ayers.
Good morning, Pastor Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor, Mr. Green, Mr. Presbyterian, welcome back. Today I'm presenting to you the final contract, renewal contract for the Marion Charter School. This is a renewal contract that will extend their charter through the 2025 school year. Back in February, you approved the application, the renewal application, and we've been in the contract negotiation. This is a standard contract that DOE provides, and it's on the consent agenda for Tuesday. I emailed it to you all yesterday, so if you have any questions on it.
None.
Nope. All right, I thank you very much, appreciate it.
Any public comment? There being none, all right.
Staffing plan.
I'm sorry, district staffing plan, Dr. Grantham.
Perfect comes to this, you talked about this with the
Yes.
district strategy plan. Do you want me to, you want to talk about it?
Just give a brief update. We're gonna kind of,
We find our budget out, Miss Boston Ellis is thinking Monday from the state. We'll kind of know what we're working with. And we are preparing for cuts. And remember, you asked her to bring a 10%, a 20%, a 30%. We'll have fiscal numbers Monday. Again, we think it's a little premature to do a district staffing plan based off a 30% reduction or 20% reduction. And after we get the numbers, then we'll bring a district staffing plan. But we have not been hiring people, A, because we can't run fingerprints, and B, because we're waiting to see what we have. We will bring 4 times the district staffing plan to you. We'll start over from square one after we have a budget next week. So she feels confident that we'll get something Monday or Tuesday. And then we'll start the district staffing plan completely over.
we did have discussion about not getting ahead of putting the cart ahead of the horse. I think we kind of need to wait just a little bit.
So we're having a hiring freeze right now then until.
Well, we can't hire anybody because we can't run fingerprints. So
Okay.
there's nobody in the state that I know is hiring anybody.
Right.
And we can't even check, we can't run fingerprints right now. So we just had a retirement, for example, HVAC. Can't hire anybody because we can't check references or where they're from right now.
How can you not do fingerprints?
Company shut down.
Really?
It's in all throughout the state. Yes, ma'am.
Would that be considered essential?
I would think so too, right.
Like, what's the sheriff's department and everybody doing? Can they go there?
I don't know.
That's what I mean, there's a time when that's.
I don't know, Miss Stacy, but we just want to get the budget before we start building stuff. And we know what's coming in, and, you know, the statute is November 7th. Y'all have to approve the budget. It's a long time from now. We have time, and we'll bring it to you 4 times like we ordinarily do. It's going to be pushed back.
Thank you, Dr. Grantham.
You're welcome.
Any public comment? Guys, can we take a recess?
Sure.
Brief recess. Let's recess for 10 minutes. Use restroom. We're gonna recess at, what time is it?
Okay. For just a minute.
10:17. We're back on at 10:28 a.m. We'll continue with our work session. Comprehensive Mental Health Plan, Ms. Amanda Steckman, Mental Health Coordinator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Reverend
Morning.
Cummings, board members, Superintendent Mayor, Attorney Green, and Ms. Prespatino. I'm here this morning to provide an update on our proposed budget for the mental health plan. Last 2 weeks ago, when I first proposed the mental health plan, the budget that we had was based on what we had received last school year. So that is what you see, the very first page is that initial proposed budget. Behind that is a budget that includes approximately $400,000 in addition to that original budget. And that's the estimated budget that we will be receiving for this upcoming school year. Now, we know the governor has not signed the budget, but we wanted to give a realistic picture of how we plan to spend that money for the upcoming school year. So you'll see highlighted, the first highlight is the new amount that we would be receiving. Underneath that, you'll see school counselor elementary, new position, and that is the position at College Park Elementary. So that was discussed 2 weeks ago as well. We're looking at reducing the ratio there at College Park with the Evergreen students moving over there. Underneath that, you'll see the centers, licensed mental health therapist services, and we have a close relationship with the centers. They do provide school-based therapy services. That's an option that our multidisciplinary teams can refer out to, and we would like to, in kind, be able to support and maintain those therapists coming to our schools. So they've dedicated those therapists to Marion County Public Schools. That's their full-time job. So we feel like it would be important to support them with that. And then underneath that, you'll see professional development, and really that's going to be going towards our youth mental health first aid training. So that's manuals. If we're doing the virtual option, that's purchasing the in-seat requirement, and then we also have to pay out stipends for any off-contract training. So that's why we put the rest in that line item, because again, we're trying to make sure that all of our staff members are trained.
And that's meeting the requirement, correct?
Correct, yes.
Ms. Tegman,
Was that the PD you said, the professor?
Yes, the professional development, that's going to be going towards youth mental health first aid training.
a concern that I think everybody has, and that is a legitimate concern, is that when we do get our children back in school, even kids who've had really supportive families, they've been away from their friends, they've been away from their normal sporting activities. A lot of these children, their safe haven has been taken away. I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of trauma that we are going to have to deal with as a school district when our children get back in school. Received notification from the Florida School Board Association that they've made some recommendations to the Department of Education, including no assessment tests next year, to try to get our children back to normal. So I want us to be very cognizant of that and to really begin to put some plans into place to deal with the trauma and the mental health issues that our students, even students that may not normally have some issues, to be able to deal with them. So are you and your staff currently talking about that and?
Yes, that is our top priority for next school year. We know that there's additional stressors at home, and that is more than likely causing some trauma for our youth. And we know that unless we address that, we're really not going to make any gains with our students. So our team has already started discussions on providing training to administrators, to teachers and staff about signs of trauma and what that looks like, so we can identify those students early and provide early intervention within the framework that we've already established. So yes, absolutely, we feel like that's our top priority moving forward.
Thank you. I feel like it, and I would like for children to be able to have the opportunity to really talk about their feelings. And, our teachers have been through some trauma. I mean, we all have, but I really want us to be able to focus on our kids. So thank you very much.
I'm glad Ms. McCall said that. Yesterday I was over trying to get some numbers concerning some stuff, because there are a lot of people that are having some trauma, especially our kids. And I went back and because I knew before school we had like a lot of Baker Acts throughout the school year. We've had 57 since spring break. So these kids are still going through some things at home, and they're going to need all the support that we can give them.
The Children's Alliance is mentoring and tutoring a lot of children right now, and we are definitely seeing some clear signs that there's going to be a lot that we're going to need to do.
And a point that you brought up is the students that we don't know of yet.
Right.
DCF reporting is actually down right now because we don't have the eyes and ears
Right.
on those kids. So thinking of all of that coming back to us starting next school year, we have a lot of work to do.
And it really speaks to the need, too, for continued stability of staff at the school levels, those relationships that have been built with kids over last year. It's going to be very calming to our students to see familiar faces when they get back on campus. And that will really facilitate our kids breathing that huge sigh of relief that while everything else has been chaotic, now that I'm back in school, I'm seeing my typical people that I felt safe with, that I made progress with. So when it comes to our plan for who's going to be where, I again want to just put it out there right now that unless there is a compelling reason to move any school-based staff around, it's going to have to be truly, truly necessary.
Right, and that's the most basic that we can do is providing those relationships, focusing on relationships, consistency, routine. That's going to help our students the most.
A lot faster.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stegman.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Any comments from you guys?
I did have one more question. I was noticing on the rollover on the curriculum kits, 150,000, and I believe I'm remembering that Sanford Harmony was the base, I think, and that's free, right?
That is free, yes. So all of those kits were barcoded, and just like any other curriculum that we see in the school system. And so those materials are tracked, checked in and out. So we're maintaining that. I know that we're just aligning ourselves with the current procedures that we have in place now that, teachers may not be coming back to their classrooms. So what we're doing is we're waiting for next school year and for teachers to come back, and then we'll start tracking those and making sure that they're in the correct places.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, talking about the difference in children when their schedules are interrupted. I mean, I have a 3-year-old grandson, and he goes to his preschool half a day, and he started we had him with us at the beach, and he was just not himself. And Katie goes, I think he's just missing all of his friends, but he can't express what he's missing. And so the daycare had stayed open. It's a real expensive daycare, and they kept paying just to hold his slot there, but they had taken him out because of COVID and stuff. But this daycare, it was a church daycare, and they stayed open in Orlando. And Katie goes, I'm putting him back in, and he just immediately smoothed back out because he was so glad to see his friends. And he couldn't tell his mom like, we were jumping through hoops for him. We were like taking him in the wagon. We were all like passing him around, but he just was not himself. As soon as he got back to school and got back on his little morning routine, he was totally leveled back out. And we grew up with the old saying, I don't know if y'all remember, I don't know if y'all are, none of y'all are as old as a couple of us, but an idle mind is devil's workshop. And so we kind of grew up with that from our grandmas, you know? And so I think it really is, you know, there's just idle people and.
Well, consistency provides predictability. And if we don't know what's going to happen next, that's when our anxiety levels rise. So it's definitely for youth, providing consistent routine, keeping a schedule, that's really important.
But just seeing how it, you know, because I wouldn't have thought that it would make that much difference, but he didn't even know what was wrong, but he was missing the camaraderie of his friends and stuck at home with his baby 8-month-old sister, and, you know, and it was just too much for him. And he got back to his routine, and she goes, whew, I wish I'd never taken him out, you know, because he was doing so well. He only goes 3 days a week, but still, it made a difference, you know.
Absolutely.
All right.
You're going to have 40,000 of those coming back.
Any public comment?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Code of Student Conduct, Mr. David Ellers.
Good morning, Chair Cummings.
Morning.
Vice Chair Thrower, board members, Dr. Mayer, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Prestipino. Here to present the recommendations our Code of Conduct Committee are bringing forward to you for the Code of Conduct for next year. Purposes, we're just looking at our recommendations and letting you take a look at what we're bringing forward. We met virtually on the 31st and 7th. It was an interesting way of work, as we're doing with everything. We actually reached out virtually to several parents. Typically, we have parents on these committees, so we sent paperwork out, had individual members, myself as well, talking to the parents about the recommendations. We're doing the work session today. Part of the purpose is to get some direction from you moving forward, and then on the 21st, I will be back to finalize any recommendations or concerns you might have. Really, we were focusing on only a couple of areas. We feel like we've got a pretty solid, usable code of conduct, and we didn't think there were a lot of significant changes that needed to happen. So really, we were looking at the code of conduct glossary and the primary chart and the alcohol and drug chart. And the alcohol and drug chart was the most significant changes we were recommending. Continuity is very important. We are looking at usability by our deans and administrators. And then again, we're mainly dealing with minor changes in definitions to help the deans better apply the code equitably. And if you take a look at the drug and alcohol chart, this is the piece I first wanted to start with, is the biggest recommendations is we're looking at offering another tier of consequences for simple possession of marijuana or alcohol. Currently, they go to diversion the first time, and then the second time, if they're caught again, they would go for an expulsion and come to the board. Out of our 109 expulsions that we've done this year, 50 of them have been for drugs. So just a dramatically high number of drug offenses.
Is most of it marijuana?
A lot of it's marijuana. We had 9 cases, first-time offenders who participated in THC oil, and we'll talk about that, that went straight to an expulsion. And again, it's something just to consider. But if you take a look in the middle of the chart that I provided, under alcohol, marijuana, and then their own prescription drug misuse, we added a tier of alt placement rather than expulsion. And then the third offense would be an expulsion. And then at the very bottom, for THC oil possession, level 3 mandatory alternative placement or mandatory expulsion for being under the influence, which basically under the influence of THC oil, we'd have to really catch the student vaping. So they weren't the one doing it, but we, for instance, may have had a video or multiple witnesses that saw the kid vaping the THC oil.
We may also want to look at kratom, because kratom's becoming another drug of choice and we've had some overdoses because of kratom. So we may want.
Yeah.
Kratom is a synthetic drug which is sold kind of over the counter, but it has caused a couple of overdoses. I think we've had a death from kratom this year.
Well, we can take a look at adding some of that. We
Yeah.
do address synthetic forms of
Okay.
drugs broadly, but it may be something it is just almost an ongoing battle with these sorts of things.
So now THC does not go to the diversion?
No, because, and we talked about this a bit last year, but because THC oil is a felony, any of those vaping cartridges that contain THC, however, from what we're gathering, we're all over the place in law enforcement in what we do with that. For instance,
Other drugs, felonies also? Like
not some of them that we expel for, heroin, LSD, but marijuana is not.
It depends on the amount,
Yeah.
like with marijuana and certain things.
So our diversion program depends upon the amount?
Well, it depends on, really, we tier it by the severity of the type of drug in a lot of ways. I'm not sure that's a great way to phrase it, but
When you try to
for
line
instance,
it up with where it is in society.
Yeah.
If it's a felony in society, y'all been staggering it based on what the state's attorneys is saying.
Exactly.
And with THC oil, such as so new, I don't want to say it's so new, but they're still all over the place on whether it's going to be a felony. There's a lot of THC oil cases that are still in limbo because the police don't know how to deal with it when they arrest them. And the courts are still in debate about it, so.
Yeah.
But it is classified as a felony right now.
When they vape it, it's a felony, THC?
yes.
THC oil,
Okay.
just the
That they
THC
put
oil
into the vaping.
in the pens.
Now, can the doctors give it to them?
No.
No,
That's
That's something different.
Yeah.
You're talking about medicinal type that's prescribed. This is something that's in
There's
those
not a
little
medicinal THC.
vial thing, so.
No, it's pretty amazing the way all that's prepackaged.
you're thinking CBD oil.
No, she's talking about THC. She's talking about that I can get from the prescribed ones.
That's limited, like, it's a very small amount then?
Different type.
Okay.
The other thing that came up out of our high school assistant principals in particular is they have some concern with offering diversion for an amount of marijuana that they seem to feel is pretty excessive, which I agree with. Currently, we do an expulsion for a student that's in possession of more than 20 grams of marijuana, which is, again, tying in what Chair Cummings said, that's a felony, because it's possession with intent to deal. But they're getting kids that have maybe 10, 15 grams of marijuana, and they're pretty confident that they're not doing it for personal use. To give you a visual, and I want you to rest assured, this is grass, the kind you get out on the lawn, but this is how much 10 grams of marijuana would look like, roughly.
That's not.
So it's a pretty good amount, and it's not something a kid's going to use at school one time themselves. So what we were looking at is adding a mandatory alternative placement for possession of.
Second, make sure that's.
Yeah, you're like, what are you at?
And if it does test positive, Mr. Ayers helped me weigh this.
Little secret, and everybody.
Throw him under the bus. But just looking at a mandatory alt placement for between 10 and up to 20 grams, because we do feel there's an intent there to distribute, even if we can't legally pursue that.
I agree, because these kids can start to get onto this. They're not really afraid of getting caught so much if it's just gonna be, go to the diversion program the first time.
No.
I mean, I would.
What would that be considered, if the police stopped them and they had that much on them, what,
That'd be a misdemeanor possession,
still a misdemeanor?
yes.
I'm little bit concerned, though, about, like, what are the numbers of kids that we're having? Like, what kind of problem is this with alcohol and marijuana possession in our schools that we have them going to the diversion program? I mean, are the numbers growing? Are they getting, like, desensitized to the whole thing? Like, oh, well, if I get caught, I just have to go to diversion?
My opinion is just, from what I've seen, I don't think our numbers are getting bigger for diversion. I did run a few numbers in my, that you had requested when we talked informally the other day. Out of our diversion students this year, or students that went up for expulsion, 22 of them had had diversion previously. So about roughly 2/5 of the students that went up for expulsion were because they had had a previous diversion and were caught either under the influence or in possession.
And they attended all 9 diversion.
Yes, they had done the diversion program.
But then, what percentage has not repeated?
Well, that's a difficult thing because some of these students may have had diversion in 7th grade and now they're juniors. So we couldn't really track back very easily that way. But to give you a rough idea, I think we had 73 students in diversion. So if you figure maybe roughly a recidivism of, 22 to 70, that's, maybe a third of our students are going ahead
No,
and,
but it helped a bunch, so.
yeah. And
Track back, though. Why can't we?
well, we could, and maybe we could provide that for you before the next board meeting. It's going through individual records to try to find each one of those
I'm
things.
curious, are we enabling children to bring this stuff because they know they're not going to get in all that much trouble if they get caught? Or are we really helping enough students that makes it worth the trouble?
So when you say eliminate diversion, what are we going to put in place? Will
That
we
would
go-
be a mandatory alt-placement for the
alt-placement,
10 to
okay.
20 grams.
They have
Okay.
10 to 20 grams.
And the one thing, Mrs. Stacy, that I would bring up is something you say a lot, is if we eliminate diversion, the one thing I do like about it, that student that makes just one
See, that's what I'm
really
saying.
poor choice, it does give us a nice opportunity.
I'm
If-
not talking about eliminating. I'm just curious how well it's working. Like, maybe we need to add, in other words,
As far as recidivism.
instead of, like, so they get a 10-day suspension probably plus that, right?
They get the 10-day suspension, then they have to serve the diversion.
Because we might want to, I mean, if we see it's not working as well as we'd like to see it work, we might need to add a little more of a twist to it somehow. Are they getting drug tested afterwards, or?
That is not part of our code of conduct because, I suppose the board has the authority. I'd have to talk to Mrs. Green. It gets a little dicey. We've got to do it for cause usually.
I don't know how, I mean, the kids that though have gone through, I mean, their parents would really appreciate it. May it have to be parent approved or something like that, I don't know.
A lot of privacy,
Yeah. Issues.
hold it, due process, there's.
Right.
It's a pretty,
Because they can go in and do random
Yeah,
drug
but
testing.
technically, they haven't been found guilty of a crime or anything like that. They're not on probation or any type of supervision, so you can't necessarily just,
I don't know, I just don't want to enable them to do these things when they really don't, when the first consequence isn't that bad and they don't have to be careful till the second consequence.
it's a tough
Adding
situation.
alternative
Well,
places.
on the amounts, so it would then be 9 grams or less would be diversion?
Yeah, technically anything under 10 grams is how you do it. So if it was 9.9, it would be diversion.
Right. Okay, so, and also too, keeping in mind that for a first-time offender, they're getting 10 days out of school, which is a long time, considering the school year is only 180 days. And they're having to go through 9 weeks of diversion and complete it, because if they don't, then it's an alt placement?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Just curious how well, how good it's working for us.
It's
I mean,
a
we
good question.
Might need to add another week or two to it or something, make it a little bit less fun or whatever. But,
And part of that depends on the support of, or the lack of support of parents.
we can talk ourselves out of doing anything, but let's just look and see how effective it's being done and think about just how that could help us to make that decision.
I'll see what we can do as far as a deeper dive on the recidivism, maybe go back 4 or
Now,
5 years and see what we've
what's the advantage
got.
to doing the alt placement instead of the expulsion? Tell me how that.
Just a shorter period of time, we'd alternatively place those students for a minimum of a semester. That was one of the concerns that Dean's has. We still need them to go off campus because of the second offense, but just really
Expulsion requires a year, but they come back for.
a year plus, a minimum of a year. So it would just be a reduced consequence for that second offense. But still a very significant. Don't want to underestimate that an alternative placement's a minor
No, I
consequence.
like the idea of the less, but I need to caution everyone of something that Mr. Crawford used to talk about. I want to caution the board as I'm leaving out of here. As time goes on, you need to understand that when it comes to an alternative placement, it doesn't come before the board. There's not really anything come before the board. Parents don't come back for early. So say they didn't do the minimum and the district decided, they're going to execute. They're going to give them a whole year where maybe a half year would have done. Had they come before the board, we might have said, well, really, I think a half year is enough. But we had some employee that was in the district that, whatever, and gave them, which has happened before, that just threw the book at this kid for a year. It will not come before you guys to do early reentry. So where an expulsion will.
The one thing I will say, Mrs. Stacy, I know that's been a concern of yours, so I actually thought about it a little bit. To my knowledge, in the last 2 years with me doing this, we have not had a parent appeal a drug charge. I do not recall one. It's typically the fights that come in front of you.
I remember one, well, you weren't doing it, but you might not always be here. But there will come a day when you retire and the
Yes.
board will continue on. But what I'm saying is, I remember a little girl that was at Forest High School who they found they could barely even identify what it was, and because it was in her car, and it was a big fiasco. And thank goodness it came before the board, because I think there was some real harsh administration stuff going on in that situation. You know who I'm talking about. And so I just want the board to always remember that with an alternative placement, the parents will not have the opportunity to come before you for early reentry because an expulsion is handled differently. So, just for your information, if you had somebody just start throwing these kids out for a year, out for a year, out for a year, which has happened here in years past with different administrators, that you will not have the opportunity to give the student a chance to come before you. Just want y'all to know that. Okay.
Then really the last things we had were some changes on the glossary terms. And I won't read through all of these. Mainly the purpose of these were just to clarify some misunderstandings that administrators had in administering those. If you take a look on the glossary and on the primary code chart that was attached, any changes are in red. And you can see that most of these are fairly minor. Battery, we added some examples of what that level of battery would look like on the battery level 3. We explained about a district behavior contract, which is something we had put in the code of conduct last year, and when that applies. Added some things about horseplay.
How do you define, and that was going to be my question, how do you define horseplay?
Well,
Because that's pretty broad.
it is.
Horseplay to me may be different than horseplay to you.
And part of why we decided to put that language in, and that's going to be a difficult thing, this always gets into tricky pieces. But we had parents that were throwing back primarily at our elementary school deans and principals, while they were just playing. Well, when you're shoving and knocking people down, that horseplay can become a problem in a classroom or somewhere else. So we wanted to add that term. I do know that it's
problematic. I think that term is problematic.
I know.
But I don't know what,
It's too subjective.
I don't know what else you could say, but I agree with we need to do something, but I don't know what the terminology would
Because
be.
horseplay includes all those things right there. We've just thrown in another unicorn that's hard to identify.
Okay. If you want to think about that, we can talk
Yeah,
about
I
that on
will.
the 21st.
I'm gonna do a little word search.
Where do you have this at?
Too is developmental. So if you've got a 4-year-old
Yeah.
who is shoving, that's something that would be worked on with the teacher in the classroom and all, but, you know, much different than a 5th grader doing the same behavior.
So Reverend Cummings, under the glossary, under
see it.
behavior, and then under the primary codes.
Yes.
I want to think about that and see if we can't maybe come up with a
Better
better term. But I agree with the superintendent. I mean, what's considered playing around at a kindergarten and playing around in 5th grade are two completely different things. But I agree that we need to add something. I'm just not sure that's the right term. So let me think about that.
Well, what else would horseplay contain besides kicking, poking, pinching, running, pushing, tripping? I mean, what else?
When they start, especially little boys, when they start playing around and all of a sudden it gets into, you know, a little bit more than it was supposed to, so.
But that's horseplay, but, I mean, I don't know how you can, I think you've got all the descriptions of things that can happen to you already, but to throw horseplay in is like throwing in just a new subjective.
I'll take a look.
I mean, when I was in school, horseplay could mean a lot, and it's real broad. We should just walk behind kids and slap them upside the back of their head. That's horseplay. But to someone else, that could be something different. So that definition is broad. We got to kind of pull those things in.
We'll find another word.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like you said, slap them up behind the head, well then, here's pushing or tripping or pinching or poking. I mean, you'd be poking at someone's head. I mean, it's already defined there. We're gonna throw something else in, so then the child's horseplaying.
Maybe we'll just revisit on the 21st so everyone can think about it.
Yeah.
Behavior needs to be specific and observable.
Exactly, and definable.
Right, and horseplay is old school, you know, and so I'm not sure that it really is defined enough. It's very subjective, so I would propose
Eliminate.
replacing horseplay with slapping.
Okay.
I'm gonna look.
I say we can think.
We can research some
Let's
terms.
come back to it.
To look at that. If you look also computer fraud, we added storing unapproved or inappropriate content on a district computer or storage device.
Good idea.
Then,
Wait.
go ahead.
Storing unapproved or inappropriate content on a district storage.
And that would be a level 3 offense.
Just storing it? What if they stick their jump drive in and it has it on it?
If they're doing other things, if they're
We've ran
storing
across
it
that
on
this
a
year.
district device was the big issue. That's sort of where we take possession of it to a large degree. Then if you thumb through, there's a fairly large amount under sexual harassment level 3. All that is simply language from the Cessor definition that we added to that definition of what we're having some deans getting a little confused between harassment and sexual battery or a sexual offense, and we wanted to make sure they had a good understanding that harassment is a pattern of behavior rather than a single incident typically. And then finally, at the very tail end, our ever-changing wireless device, we added smartwatches and wireless headphones. And we'll probably be adding something in the next couple of years with that. The last two things I wanted to bring to your attention, and something I really feel like the board needs to make the absolute decision on always, is dress code language. Dress code language can be very, very controversial. And it's something that honestly is probably as difficult a thing we deal with as anything. There was a committee member that wanted us to consider adding a prohibition of slides and flip-flops mainly for safety reasons. That, you know, if we ever have to evacuate or something, it makes it very difficult to move out of a building. Parents that I talked to were relatively supportive of that, the ones I spoke to, one with the caveat that I not share that information with their daughter, because they were willing to give their opinion but not share it with their children.
When
But-
my kids were in school, you could not wear slides or flip-flops to school because of the danger factor, and I don't know when that changed, although
was-
they've been out of school for.
I believe about 10 years ago, and only at the secondary level. The primary level, because of PE, they still have to wear closed-toed shoes.
But then you got teachers who even would wear heel, like a little heel that's a slide.
I'm like, we're Florida. I'm not
know
sure
that we-
picking flip-flops and slides is the
I think we
battle I
got so
want to
many
pick.
more
with-
problems to send kids home for and discipline them than their shoes.
No, I'm not saying discipline. This is a real, I personally have an issue with it. I'm tell you why. I see these kids walking to school. I saw it morning after morning, walking to school with these slides on, and then they get caught in the middle of the road, and they're trying to run, and the slide is coming off their feet. That's a safety issue, because you can't move effectively when you got on shower slides and flip-flops. What happens if someone comes into school and they start shooting?
You kick them off and run.
That's what we're thinking. We're adults, but these are kids. They're not thinking like that. It is truly a safety issue. You have things that could drop, books, anything could drop on their feet. That is truly a safety issue, guys. I mean, y'all may be looking at it different because we're in Florida, but when I went to school, you could not wear slides.
They have to have backs to all their, because they wear the heels that's got the slides like the, I got an Agner pair of
What
those.
kind of liability are we opening ourselves up to if we keep slides and flip-flops?
What's the first thing that's going to happen when somebody runs over their feet or a trip trying to get through a mass crowd or something like that?
How many times has that happened?
I know, I mean, we are,
Potential is always
haven't-
there.
Well, there's a
but we
potential for
can't make rules
anything.
for everything that might
I asked a
happen.
question.
I can't think of any risk cases y'all have right now involving somebody hurting themselves wearing slides or flip-flops.
I don't want a kid to not go to school that morning because they didn't have a shoe to wear, except for maybe their slides that they wear to the mall or something like that.
Listen, these kids walking around with Nike slides on. I just feel that we're dropping standards when we don't provide safety for them. Some schools have stairs, they gotta climb stairs with these slides and stuff on. Come on, guys, now, I know I ain't the only one that's looking at this and saying, there's something wrong with that.
One thing that one of the assistant principals brought up that I thought was something to consider with this is we are going to have students coming back, and this is going to be an enforcement issue. And when we're coming back, is it a window where we want to try to implement a new dress code piece? And the other concern that she brought up about that, it's a fairly inexpensive piece of footwear. And are we pushing a family to have to buy more expensive footwear? I would suggest,
They have a school shoe and an out-of-school shoe, and some kids can't afford that.
I would suggest between now and the 21st, just as much as possible, listen to people that talk to people you trust their opinion and listen to on this piece. It is going to be controversial, I will tell you.
And here's my thing, if we are going to expect this and enforce it for students, then therefore we would want that for our staff to be role models. And I know.
Mr. Avery had deep concerns about that.
Yeah, and I know from schools where I've worked, it's been expected to, if you're gonna have open-toed shoes, to at least have a back on them or a strap for safety's sake. But again, we don't want to be hypocrites here, and if we're trying to raise adults, then we need to be modeling that behavior, so
We got 3,000
I'm going to leave that right
teachers
there.
that's out there to be after about their shoes, because then if the students are doing something different, I don't know, I just think we can't legislate absolutely every possible thing that, we might have a school issue or an emergency or something, that we've only had one of, really, that I remember in the history of this district, and that happened at Forest, and I can't think of really any other big ones, to start legislating for like, whatever unicorn hits, we gotta have it covered. I don't know, I just think there comes a time where we need to focus on teaching the kids how to read and not care so much about the shoes they've got on their feet. And closed-in shoes are more expensive, and they have to be perfectly fitted and stuff like that. Then you're gonna have kids with blisters on the back of their feet, and they can't walk, they take the shoe off, and they're walking around barefooted because they got a blister on the back of their foot, because they got a brand-new shoe on that's causing blisters. I don't know, I just,
I look at it a little bit different, Ms. Stacy. I think school is preparation for real life. I think that
in
school-
jobs in real life, you can wear those
I
shoes. You
think
wear them to
school is
church.
preparation for real life. I think when people enter into the workforce, they're not wearing slides to work. They're wearing, no, the majority of people, when they go to work, they wear shoes.
You're a man, but women do.
And I just think that if you're gonna prepare people for life, you prepare people for life. We're dealing with the whole person, the holistic person. If we're gonna deal with, you train kids at an early age.
We'll just
When they
have-
get to the age where they can make those decisions on their own, then they do what they need to
We'll
do.
just have to agree to disagree on this one.
I think it's going to be an enforcement issue. I agree that I think it's a safety issue, and, but I'm not so sure that this is the year that we want to add, just getting our kids back, and I think it's going to be hard
kids
to.
suspended because they wear slides 3 times and they get 3 checks by their name for it, and then they're gonna, what do we do to them, I
So
mean,
can we,
expelling a kid?
can we
'cause he
maybe
wore
put this
flip-flops?
on the back burner? And I would like to talk to some principals and assistant principals myself and see what they say, but I'm not sure this is the year to do it. But I do think we ought to, let's do a little more research on it and do some asking of the people that are at the schools, boots on the ground kind of thing, so.
I really want community and parents to weigh in on this, because to me, if we're going to consider implementing something like this, it should be part of an overall dress code. If it's a dress for success, which I happen to heavily support, then that's only going to happen if you have the support of the school administration, the parents. That is a delicate thing. And
we have to change some of our teacher dress, the way they dress.
so, yes, so this to me is, if we're gonna do it, then I say let's consult with each individual school, and we have schools that already implement dress codes very successfully because they have support.
That's what I was about to say. Look at the magnet schools that we have in
Right.
this district. None of them have flip-flops. None of them have flip-flops. None of them have slides. The kids are doing well.
Overall uniform.
Exactly. The kids are doing well. It hasn't hurt anything.
But those are the children whose parents are super involved because it's a school of choice. The parents
Not
are
all of 'em.
actively involved. The magnet schools are.
Not all of them.
What one's not a school of choice?
Not all of them, the parents are actively involved, Ms. Stacy.
They have to be involved enough.
We need to move
I
on.
think we do too.
We
We're
need
not
to,
gonna
we
stop.
need to
But the
move on.
teachers at those schools can wear these shoes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask that you consider that when you make
And I-
this decision.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed it.
I don't
And
think
it
this is the
sounds like
sort
an
I want
This,
to die on.
this, I was gonna say, this is not the battle we need to
the
be
hill everyone
fighting.
wants.
That we
No.
need to, we've got so many bigger problems than shoes.
Yes.
What about unicorn hair? That's your.
That's actually our next one.
Yes.
We're actually, we'd like to recommend considering eliminating the prohibition of extreme hair colors. This one, I don't know is truly enforced in hardly any location anymore, because what is an extreme hairstyle or an extreme hair color? And it seems like the only people that were ever concerned about it were 1 or 2 teachers on a staff who didn't like the purple hair.
If someone wants to look like a fool, let them look like a fool. Let them make that on their decision.
My theory is if you can't dye your hair purple in middle school, when are you ever
Get it
going to be
over
able to
with.
have a chance to do it?
Get it out of your system, get it over with, see how stupid you look, and go and grow up.
So I would agree with eliminating that.
And then just any questions or other concerns you have out of the code of conduct.
Are we addressing, the concern about students who defend themselves in an altercation?
That language actually worked fairly well. We have got a fairly lengthy technical assistance paper we've worked with
Can we read
people
it?
on.
Can we read the technical assistance?
Yeah, I'll get that for you. I think we've got a copy of that, that we cover in fighting. We did a lot of training with deans and APs out of the gate, actually gave some scenarios. So I'll have to see if I can dig some of that up. And I
Okay.
think we do have a technical assistance paper on it.
If you say you have, if the teachers, if somebody has access to a technical assistance paper, then you got a technical assistance paper.
I think it's the deans that have it. Those are really for helping deans and APs
Well,
make
that should be
decisions.
public record.
Okay.
Everybody-
I just have to go on our portal. I
It
hate,
should be attached to the code of conduct.
I did. I think I misspoke. I know we've got one about fighting. It's on our portal. I may have misspoke that it goes into depth about that, but we did do a training, and I can find what we provided on the agenda and other things to talk about that piece.
But are we adding that to the code of conduct?
No, it's in there. We embedded language last year about, and what we've tried to do is with our technical assistance papers and other things, is keep some of that confusing language out of the code of conduct that allows, just a lot of ambiguity. It's really directive.
That part about protection of yourself.
It is,
Code of conduct.
that is actually in the narrative part about suspensions. And I can bring that language back to you.
Give me, so I can
Absolutely.
40, 50 pages and just
Mhm.
give it to me?
Yes, I can get that to you today.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
That's a huge one. Self-defense is
Thank you for
huge.
training the deans on that, too.
Oh, we've been working hard with them on that, and it's always a tricky issue, is trying to come up with culpability on those sorts of things.
Thank you, Mr. Ellers.
Uh-huh.
We had some spirited discussion here.
It always is, and dress code is always the worst.
Always, always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment on code of conduct? There being none, board membership dues. This is that time of the year again. We've got our invoice for our board, our membership dues. It's -1 because Ms. Stacy's is a little bit different. So we got a reduction in the membership dues for this year, $17,564.80
For Florida School Board Association?
for the School Board Association. Yeah. So,
Well, the new person that comes on in my spot may want to be a part of it, so they'll have that opportunity to join when that
Right.
time comes.
right. Okay. Any discussion? There being none, board concerns. Ms. McCall?
No, not today. We delivered, we were back on the backpack delivery, Interfaith. Mr. Eller's team delivered about 200 boxes of food to the schools, outlying schools yesterday. So, again, a special thank you to everybody that's helped with that, and to Mrs. Grimsley at Interfaith and her staff.
Thank you. Ms. Stacy?
Nope, I don't have anything.
Ms. King?
Nothing.
Ms. Dorr?
Just as Teacher Appreciation Week continues, I'm noticing across all kinds of social media that schools are coming up with ways to honor their teachers. And I will say again, from crisis comes creativity. And yes, this is a time of uncertainty. However, it's also a time for all of us to bring forth our most heartfelt suggestions and ways to help each other get through this time. I have no doubt that we will, and I look forward to just continuing our mission and moving forward. So take good care, everybody, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dorr. I'm sorry, Dr. Mayor?
Officer Paz, thanks for being here today. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Ms. King? Presbyterian? Again, thank you guys for coming out this morning to deal with the business of the district. I too want to say that we appreciate all of our teachers. It's Teacher Appreciation Week. Had the opportunity to be out at Legacy yesterday and to see those teachers driving through. They did a drive-through luncheon, which was different. It was good, but it was different. So we celebrate all of our teachers this week and thanking them. And Ms. McCall, I saw them delivering the boxes of food yesterday, so it's getting around. It's getting around. I got a call, I won't say the name or school, but I had a call from some staff that are concerned about what is school gonna look like in August, and are we being proactive and not reactive? Are we going to have a plan for the fall? And as the best answer I can give them, we don't know what it's gonna look like in the fall. We have expectations, we have hopes, we right now, we don't really know what the fall is gonna look like. But I would suggest that if you do have, suggestions or recommendations or anything like that, that you would talk to your principals or send to your area directors or to the superintendent's office. Because I'm sure that we want to know what your ideas are, but we don't know it. And I think a lot of times people, because they don't know, because everything's been so normal all the time, it just, all these questions and stuff come up. So we're a district that we want to know your ideas, we want to hear suggestions. We can't do every suggestion and thing, but we will listen to them. So I just want to let them know, that everybody know out there that we are listening. So please, if you have issues, concerns, send them to us. We want to know what you're thinking. And with that, thank you, guys. I don't have any other comments this morning. I'm going to ask for adjournment for our attorney-client session.
You can just adjourn.
Meeting adjourned at 11:19.